In today's program, we will be discussing with Brother Lexus why Christians need their own special operation teams. And in the next program, we will be discussing, we get to it here, why Christians need their own armies. And so we welcome Brother Lexus to the program.
Thank you, AJ, for having me on Order Militaris Radio to do this week-long series on the Order and why, if you've heard about us and follow us on social media and support us in tiny little ways, why it's now necessary that you consider more major support for our projects if we're ever going to do anything to help anyone. So, AJ, you got some questions?
Yeah, so we're going to start out with, work our way through the Masonic version into the Catholic, why the Catholics need their own. Why are normal special operation teams called out to rescue people?
Yeah, so if you know a little about modern Western military organization, there's these teams called special operations. They're usually very small and highly trained, capable of doing a variety of things. And on the spur of the moment, teams can be put together to handle specific tasks that require these skills. And since they're small groups of individuals, they can get in and out of tight spaces without, as it were, showing up on the radar. So this is very essential in modern times because anything can happen. Heads of state could be kidnapped, ambassadors could be kidnapped, small numbers of civilians or important famous people could end up in the hands of devious people, and it becomes a political necessity to try to rescue them. Probably the most famous special ops team in modern times is when President Carter attempted to free the hostages at the American embassy in Tehran. At the end of his administration, it was a total failure. He asked the Navy Special Operations to do it, and they weren't qualified. And he was kind of set up by the U.S. brass because he should have sent the Army teams to do it. And they didn't even prepare well because they had helicopters that weren't designed to fly through desert dust storms. Mm-hmm. And but since that time, it's become more and more obvious that things like that are needed. So the Catholic Church has 1.3 billion members around the world. Kidnappings are taking place. Hostages are being held in many different countries. But we don't have special operations forces. The Vatican doesn't have any military. It's a demilitarized country.
So when these secular special operation teams are called out, who are they usually rescuing?
Yeah, so it's usually politicians or people of political importance, or maybe big industrialists or wealthy people. And those are special op teams that work for government agencies. But there's also a lot of private military corporations in the world that do this kind of work that you never hear of because it's not in the papers. They don't publish what they're doing. They don't even admit they're doing it for reasons of security. And a lot of these companies work for oil companies, executives, because there are various groups, like in recent years in Colombia, and now in places like Africa or the Mideast, who will kidnap CEOs and managers and hold companies for ransom to hundreds of millions of dollars. And since these executives are very important to their companies and know lots of things that the companies wouldn't want their competitors to know or even public authorities to know, they're willing to go to great lengths to get them out. Although recourse to special operations is usually a last resort, because things can go awry. It may not go as planned. Mm-hmm. So it's a recognized industrial standard, you might say, in the security services. And there's a lot of companies that promise to help get your loved ones out of places and ask you lots of money and never achieve it. A lot of scams go on that way. And there's some infamous cases about that. So they do it. Companies do it. Governments do it. Why doesn't the church have groups to do it for them?
When Christians are taken, what usually happens to them?
Yeah, so if you follow the news about what's going on in Africa or the Mideast, most of the time when Christians are kidnapped, things go bad, and no one does anything other than pray. And I'm not saying prayers are not useful, they're very important. But there were two Syriac bishops that disappeared in Syria and back in like 2011. Never heard of them again. Their human remains haven't even been found. And
Mm,
nearly on a weekly basis, there's Catholic priests and seminarians and faithful being kidnapped in Kenya, or missionaries in other West African countries like Mali or Burkina Faso, or not in Niger. Kidnappings have gone on in Congo, Uganda, now even in Tanzania, and kidnappings are very common in places like Sudan, South Sudan, or Somalia. And you could be, if you're an American, you could be kidnapped by almost any kind of group in the Mideast or even in South America, especially if you start or if you're known to be an opponent of some cartel or criminal or terrorist organization. The church sometimes attempts a ransom negotiation. Sometimes government forces succeed in rescuing individuals. The Nigerian government has rescued a fair number of individuals that way. Things can get bloody. A lot of people can get shot, and an armed rescue doesn't necessarily mean the person you're rescuing will get out alive. And but basically, the church doesn't do anything. She's completely passive, and if the government isn't able to handle the situation, nothing is done. So the church could do a lot more if she had someone to turn to. There's
mm,
even a bishop in Nigeria who had a dream that God gave him a sword and God would help him defend his people against all these kidnappings. But other than the dream, nothing has happened. Um, Order Militaris can be that dream.
mm. If the church or whoever pays for these Christians to be released, how much do they have to, usually dish out, and who do they, pay to?
It's usually in the millions. And the money, unfortunately, on a ransom goes to buying guns and drugs and recruiting more bad people, bad actors. So the church shouldn't be raising millions to give to bad guys. She should be
Mm,
raising millions to train good guys to go after bad guys.
mm,
That should be common sense. So if we don't act and we only pray, money eventually is going to go to bad guys, one way or the other. Either going to steal it or kill Christians or hold us ransom or steal our property, and uh, it's going to be a lot. It's always more expensive to handle a problem once it gets big.
mm.
Now, I could see if we're only 10 million Catholics in the world, but we're 1.3 billion Catholics in the world. There's really no reason we're acting this way.
Does paying the takers usually release the hostages?
Excuse me?
Does paying the
Oh,
ho-
yeah, payment usually gets them released, although, when you're paying someone to release a hostage, you should ask for proof of life. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the person is alive. So it's always a very tricky situation. And but even if you pay to get someone out, what are you creating? You're creating a precedent. So now that if they got a million for this priest, well, why don't they kidnap two priests the next time?
Mhm,
So you're making the situation worse.
mhm. Now, why would it be in the best interest if Christians can have their own special operation teams to rescue the faithful?
Well, it would be in the best interest because, first of all, if they knew that the Catholic Church had a group that did this, or even if Protestant churches knew that the Catholic Church had a group this way, there'd be someone to call when someone was kidnapped. There would be at least an organization on the ground in the country that could give them advice, counsel, uh, gather information. Um, uh, Kidnappers wouldn't target Christian ministers and Christian faithful if they knew there's an organization that's going to respond. Okay, because crooks always look for the most favorable victim. They're not going to attack the villa with the 20-foot wall. They're going to attack the villa that has the 3-foot high fence. And so the existence of organization is already a deterrent. And if they know they're going to get hit a lot, if it's going to cost them a lot more than they could possibly get, they'll stop doing it. So even once an organization exists like that in most countries, kidnappings will stop, church burnings will stop, because they know that if you touch these guys, they're going to come back and pound you.
Mm. How can Order Military Sikh begin the process of setting up what will become the Christian version of special operation teams?
Okay, so we're a small organization. So first we have to have a training program. We have to train guys. We have to have our own private military base in the United States. We have to recruit trainers, and we have to make a reputation for ourselves in doing lesser works at the beginning. We have to build up a database of American veteran special forces who are retired who would like to work with us, and analyze very well their skills, and have a staff that can say, okay, this crisis just popped up. We need this guy, this guy, this guy to put them in the team. And we've already had them train together a couple of weeks every year so they know one another and are willing to work. Because something like this requires a lot of preparation. Once we have an office in the countries where the kidnappings are going on, once we've made contacts with the hierarchy and the major Christian churches who are suffering the kidnapping, they'll know who to call, because this is a confidence thing. They have to have the confidence that calling us is going to have an issue. So we have to build up our organization, and no one else is doing this, though. So here's the solution. This is better than insurance. And having Christian guys who are willing to do it for the love of God is a lot less expensive, and it's going to be a lot more effective. But first, we have to start somewhere. So our organization has done a lot of humanitarian work, whether it's for Christians in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Armenia, India, Congo, or Uganda, or the Ukraine, even Hawaii. We've helped the church in Hawaii, and we've helped the clergy in the United States. But we don't have a physical place where we do training and where volunteers can come and train together. That won't be possible until we get investment. And we have a lot of ways you can help us in the order, but it's going to require capital to do that. A military base would probably cost at least $5 million, and a training program we at least need maybe 500,000. And to solve the problem is easy, but the means needed to solve the problem, that's where fundraising needs to take in, and that's where you can play a role, whether by if you're a person of means, or if you're not, contacting those in your community. Because I think the general consensus is among Christians, and especially Catholics, is we should have an organization like this, but no one's even dreamed the dream. And so we've dreamed the dream, and we're legally organized to put that dream into practice. But it's now, and we've been around 7 years. We're not just fly-by-nighters. And that's what we would need. That's how we would go about it.
With normal special op teams, they can pretty much enter into any country almost to do the work. How can this be done, but at an even better and even more legal way for the Christian guys?
Well, I can't get into details about future things like that, but uh, the Christian pastors of every one of these nations where things like this going on, they know a lot about what's going on the ground. So obviously we'd work closely with them so that our local office is fully informed about the bad actors, the locations, the individuals involved, the problems with the law, and then we would coordinate with the Christian ministers in the country to get good contacts with the government, local governments, the local civilian authorities, the local military, so that we can work in a coordinated effort, or in such a way where when we do what we need to do, the government's fully behind us. And and that takes obviously organization. So We not only need a training base in the United States, we'll need facilities in each of these main countries, offices, and a staff that can do this kind of coordinated information gathering, because a response like this requires not only trained men, but lots of intel on what's going on in the local areas. And that means in that country, we are not only active when there is a kidnapping, we will have to be active 24/7 all the time, gathering information and preparing to know how to react, and even maybe deploying equipment and facilities in nearby areas, so we have something to respond with immediately, even if our special forces teams are coming in country only for this to solve the problem.
Forgot what I was going to ask for number 10.
Okay, so AJ, why don't you tell them how they can invest with Order Militar Sync? How can they help us get there? Or if they want to donate, how they can donate to our scholarship program for a training facility?
So on the show page, on the in description box on Rumble and Odyssey, you'll see on how to become a member of Order Militaris by going to the donate page by clicking the link. Then there's also, if you want to invest, we'll have the link for you to click. There you can see the different ways of how you can invest, and you can click which and prospectus you would want and follow the steps. It's very well laid out on how to invest with us. Then if you want to make a donation and help and to house the future students and you don't want to invest, click to learn more about the combat training camp, so that, and then you will scroll down to the bottom and see a donate button there, and there you can donate however much you want, and also you can donate enough for us to get a property or whatever else you think is necessary.
And if you're a business person, we have franchise offers where your business will be able to publicly identify itself as a business that supports the defense of persecuted Christians. And that's a big plus for your clients to know the integrity and value of your company or your small business. And you can contact us about more information on that. And that's a great way you can participate in a way where there's no liability and a lot of positive results. And where it's not a matter of you donating to programs that we do. You could also do that like at the end of the year, if you want to think of an organization to donate. Think of our scholarship program for young Christian men who want to start a career in security, and that's a wonderful way to do something positive. Whereas if you're an investor, maybe buying some of our shares is more worthwhile than owning Coca-Cola or IBM or Facebook.
Yep. And we ask you to please like and share our programs on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and of course on the show page where the original video will be posted, and so that we can get reach to everywhere and everyone who can watch this video.
Okay, AJ, what are our upcoming shows in this series?
Yeah. Why Christians need their own army, their own military training centers, and why they need their own military academies.
Okay, so this is going to be a great series. I look forward to joining you tomorrow.
Yep. This is Order Militaris Radio TV signing off. Deus Volt.
Deus Volt.